A friend from grad school had previously been a skydiving instructor in Colorado, and had jumped more than 600 times. One of these times, he for some reason had his wallet in his suit, and it fell out. Fell to earth somewhere. He figured this sucks, but oh well. Absolutely no chance of finding it. Separately, a man in rural Colorado was found murdered. Turns out in their remote cabin where he lived with his daughter, he had been sexually abusing her and she finally had enough and killed him. The police searched the house and all of his property, and found my friend's wallet in the trunk of his car. Police thought to themselves, that Canadian murderer left his wallet in this dude's trunk, damn easiest rest ever. Friend had the super believable alibi of couldn't have been me officer. Actually, that wallet fell out of my pants while I was skydiving. My first and worst online date, the drunk and the baby. It's 2008, I'm 18 and I meet a girl on OkCupid. She's older than me, 25 till death, educated and a bit alternative. We agree to meet at a London pub for lunch at 1 in the afternoon, which is quite a journey for me, but I make it anyway. So, she turns up a bit late with a baby in a baby carriage. I had no idea she had a kid before this, but I didn't have a problem with it. She doesn't address that I didn't know about her kid, but says she couldn't find babysitting. Well, no problem. We both go up and order a drink separately and hang out and chat. We've been there for about 2 hours and she'd gone up to the bar a whole bunch of times, mostly coming back with coffees and the occasional Coca-Cola. But then, quite suddenly, she falls forward onto the table and catches herself with her elbows and takes a big sigh and says, "Oh man, I didn't mean to get so drunk." PR. What? I tell her I didn't realize that she'd even been drinking, but she tells me that she'd been having Irish coffees, rum and cokes as well as shots at the bar. So at this point I start looking for an out, but she's becoming more and more despondent and her 1-year-old is sat in his pram, so I can't leave in good conscience. I start encouraging her to get a taxi home and she starts to cry, apologizing and saying that I must hate her. But shortly after she closes her eyes and will only respond in mumbles and groans. I try and get her to come around enough to get an address out of her, which I can't, so I take her phone, which wasn't password. 2008 non-smartphones. Most people didn't password their phone back then. Find a contact called Mum and call it. I was hoping she could come and pick her up, but it turns out Mum lives in the south of Spain. She isn't one bit happy to hear from me after I explain what happened, but presenting myself as a friend. Nonetheless, she gives me an address to get her to. I ask the bar to call me a taxi, which they do, and one of the bar staff take pity on me and help me get the woman, the baby and the stroller into the cab. I was about to give the driver money for the trip and see them off, but I realized that was a bad idea because who knows what would happen. So I get in the taxi to go take her home holding the baby the entire way, which I've never done in my life at that point. Turns out the driver is a stand-up bloke and I explain what has happened and we have a laugh about it. When we get there, he even assembles the pram for me as I take her and place her on her doorstep. I find her keys and get her door open, at which point some guy pops his head round the corner from the kitchen and asks, "Who the fuck are you?" I tell him my name and that I'm a friend and ask who he is. He says he's her fiancé. Oh. He's pretty angry that I've gotten his fiancé with his child drunk in the middle of the day. After getting the pram through the door, he begins to carry her up the stairs and he says to me, "You stay right there. You and I need to have a little chat." Nope. As soon as he turns the corner at the top of the stairs, I turn and make a run for it. Jump back in the taxi, who I asked to take me to the nearest tube station. Afterward I needed some catharsis, so text some friends who were locals and went out proper. And the kicker. On the train home that night I get a text message from her. "Had a lovely time. Can't wait to see you again." I block her number and never hear from her again. TLDR. Went on date. Date turns up with child and gets drunk without my knowledge. I drag her back to hers to make sure she's safe, only to find she also has a fiancé who is less than pleased to see me. Yuck, I hate guys like that. If you want to have a talk with somebody, have it with your fiancé. Not the guy who met her on Tinder, didn't know she had a baby, didn't know she was drinking like crazy midday, and despite all this got her and the kid home safely, and didn't know she was engaged until just a moment ago. Good on you for not sticking around. I wouldn't sit and be berated by some stranger for being the only good person in this scenario. Once, when I was 8 years old, I was running through the forest. Suddenly I got pulled back by something. I didn't know what, but it didn't hurt. I called for my dad. When he came, he gasped and said that I shouldn't move. He then proceeded to remove a fishing hook that was in my skin right next to my eye. One more millimeter to the left and I would be even blind with one eye for the rest of my life. Edit, spelling. Sounds like you guys almost stumbled upon a pot farm. A lot of guerrilla growers set up fishing hook traps. That's super fucked up. Why fishing hooks? You'd think illegal grow ops would be enough trouble without the added booby trapping charges. The booby trapping charges would be the least of their worries if caught. I once got beer using a McLovin ID from the movie Superbad. I was 20, from US so still underage. I was on a business trip and was waiting for my flight when I decided to get dinner at one of the airport restaurants. The waitress asks me what I'll have to drink and I ask what's on tap because why the fuck not? I order a Corona, but she asks for my ID. So I hand her my McLovin ID. Best $4 I've ever spent. She looks at it, smiles, and says okay and comes back with my beer. The cherry on top was when she came back a couple minutes later with another beer and gave it to me for free, saying she had accidentally poured an extra. That was the best moment of my otherwise uneventful and vanilla life. Fogel forever. The fuck you doing to go on a business trip via plane at age 20? Actually, what the fuck am I doing? 6th grade, I had hit a major growth spurt so most of my clothes didn't fit and my family couldn't afford new ones. Once winter came around, the only jacket I had that I could still fit in even a bit was much too thin to be of any use. My teacher noticed and I walked into class one morning to see a big, fluffy winter coat on the back of my chair and a chicken soup for the soul book on my desk. Her kindness still makes my eyes water, even almost 2 decades later. Ms. Robertson, if you're reading this, thank you. I never forgot. Edit, I really never thought I'd say this but read inbox. I posted this link to the thread and thought it would get buried, didn't think I'd get more than 20 upvotes and especially not gold. To answer some common questions, this was in the Phoenix, KC area, and I've tried to get in touch with her since but I don't remember her first name and she doesn't work at the school anymore. My first reaction was to hesitate. I thought maybe someone had come in early to do homework or be tutored or something and left their stuff, but she saw my hesitation and ushered me over to my seat. I've gotten more than a few comments about how it's an amazing thing that she did so, especially on a teacher's salary, and I agree. It wasn't an inexpensive coat, and I wore that thing until I literally couldn't anymore. I was robbed at gunpoint in a public bus. Dude was talking to me like he was my friend while pointing the gun at me. He only asked me for the cash I had in my wallet, and after I gave it to him he kept talking to me like we were random commuters having a conversation. Dude got more confident and asked for my phone. I said no, not the phone man, I need it, and he was like fine, it's okay, don't worry, we chilled. 10/10 would be assaulted by him again. To whom it may concern, would you please hand over all your money in your wallet? Thank you for your time and consideration. I accidentally stole a car. I had just gotten off work, I was working 2 jobs at the time and I got barely any sleep. I walked out and got into my car, started it up, and started driving home. I didn't realize something was wrong until I couldn't find my aux cord, and then I started realizing that there were things in the car that were not mine. Like the child seat in the back. I was an 18-year-old with no kids. I flip a U-turn and bus back to work to hopefully get the car back before its owner notices it's gone. I didn't. Cops were there and I was very quickly arrested. Owner dropped charges only after 3 things were done. 1. I showed my keys unlocked and started her car. Then pointed to my car, which was the same model, color, and year. 2. One of my coworkers vouched for the fact that the customer parked in a spot I almost always parked in. 3. Camera footage was pulled for the past 9 days I had worked showing that 7 of those days I parked in that spot and the other 2 I parked close to it. Edit, y'all, the cops were doing their job and were polite about it because I cooperated. And the owner was right to be angry. I was a punk kid who in her eyes had just stolen her car, or at least took it out for a joyride. The owner was a single mother and wasting any of her gas could have meant bad things. This happened to my grandfather. He went to the supermarket, walked to his car, unlocked it, started it, drove off. Pulling into the street, he realized this wasn't his car. His Cheez-Its were missing, the smell wasn't right, the interior wasn't quite right. He pulled back into the lot and saw his own vehicle, just a couple spots down from where he'd gotten into the wrong car. Same make and model, very similar, but slightly different. He was excited about and interested in what had just happened, and waited for the owner of the other wrong vehicle to exit the store. When that guy arrived, Granddad told him what had happened. "Hey, I accidentally drove your car." He went to demonstrate that his own key would unlock and start this dude's car. Nothing happened. His key no longer worked. The guy just stared at Granddad like he was crazy or stupid. The end. You know something's wrong when your Cheez-Its are missing. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video.